Welcome to the Underground Collision We Are the World, presented by Mitchell Stankovic and Associates. The next generation is standing up. The future is now. Young people want social connection. Globally, there are 2 billion Gen Z, the largest generation ever. Around 20% of Australia's population, 68 million in the US, and 30% of the world's population. The Underground decided to change the narrative. Stop talking, start doing. The next gen are here, today, asking why. Why not? And what are you doing for the people, the planet, and for them? Are we ready?
You say children shouldn't worry. Well, I'm here to tell you that my generation will not give up.
Just because we're all teenagers doesn't mean that we don't have the maturity, the knowledge, or the drive to take action and impart positive change in the world.
A lot of young people think that they have no power and they can't control what's going on in politics. We do have power.
I started trying to share my life and my story and my experiences as a disabled woman because I didn't see myself ever represented.
The young people have massively created this movement where we're on the rise, we're unstoppable, we're unignorable.
Climate change is linked to other socioeconomic problems like poverty, inequality, xenophobia, gender-based violence.
And there's a little bit of a trade-off between a company actually being sustainable and trying to make their consumers feel like they're being sustainable.
We have for young people, the unique aspect that we have is that we don't look at it as a burden, but more as an opportunity.
We come in saying we've done it, so why can't you?
So it's really giving me hope that people are starting to listen to us and starting to understand that the future is ours and we're starting to take charge of it right now. Never give up in your fight. Know that what you're doing it for a reason and the end goal will be sweet.
To the world leaders and those in power, you haven't seen anything yet.
Welcome! I told you I would be here as your host for the Underground Collision. We are the world. Are you ready for me? Are you ready to tell your kids how you make a difference? Credit unions are listening. That is what the Underground is all about, opening eyes and minds. I'm excited to be with you. Let's get started with one of my co-hosts, Brandy Stankovic.
Thank you, James. I'm thrilled to kick off the Underground by introducing the first segment, Credit Union Leadership and the Next Generation. What happens when an 11-year-old challenges an important CEO like Mr. Bob Trunzo of CUNA Mutual Group? James and Bob sat down for a conversation about credit unions. Let's check it out.
I'm really thrilled to chat with you today, and we can talk about anything you want to talk about, and take your time and ask any of the questions you want to ask, and I'll be happy to answer them. So we'll just have a good time and an easy conversation. How's that sound?
Good, yeah.
All right. What do you want to talk about?
When you were my age, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a pro football player, but I wasn't good. But I wasn't good enough. Played in high school and wasn't good enough to play in college. So I decided. So I went to after college. I went to the University of Kentucky, James, which has got a really good college basketball program. That's kind of like my favorite sport. And then I went to law school. So I'm a lawyer. So don't have your mom and your grandma hold that against me, okay?
Okay. I have another question.
Sure.
Do you know any good dad jokes?
Oh, you know what? I don't know any good dad jokes, but let me tell you something. I may be a big shot CEO and have the responsibility for managing a large company, but when I'm at home, I'm the lowest person on the totem pole at home, and everybody tells me what.
Yeah.
So I get the only dad joke I have is when I get home, I like have no status, James, at home. I'm like I take orders from everybody.
Did you hear about the kidnapping at school?
No.
It's okay. He woke up.
I like that. So what? I'm a CEO. So if you were a CEO for a day, what would you have everybody do? What would you create? Give me a new rule. What kind of rule would you put in place?
I would make people reach a certain goal by the end of the day, or they'll be punished.
You know what? I love it. You could have my job right. James, you could have my job right now. You want to take my job right now?
Sure. I would also, to help the employees, I would probably make their kids and family give them hugs and kisses so they're always smiling. And then ice cream whenever they want to. And
I like that.
If I was my mom's CEO, I would give her Fridays off and endless mimosas.
I gotta remember the endless mimosas. I like that. Maybe we'll put that on that. We'll put that on our cafeteria. We'll put that on our food and drink list for our company.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about being a CEO?
You know, my favorite part about being a CEO is, I think, leading 3,800 employees in a company and helping credit union members achieve financial security, and watching what kind of a positive impact our company has on credit unions and credit union members. I get a lot of joy out of that, and because we provide the kinds of products and solutions that make a difference in people's lives, and that makes me feel good.
Yeah. Basically, to see your company grow, right?
Yeah, see the company grow and see the company have a positive impact on your life and your parents' lives and your grandparents' lives, and I think credit unions are really good at doing that, because they provide a lot of great products, services, and benefits for people. And I think that in this time in our country, in this, as we're coming out of the pandemic, credit unions are really, really important right now.
Yeah. Okay, now to the serious questions.
All right, we're going to start the serious questions, huh?
Okay.
All right.
The world to be a better place if
everybody had the financial resources to be happy.
Yeah. That would be awesome.
I think that would be great, and I also think the world would be a better place if everybody was kind to each other.
Yeah, that's what I would have said.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for everybody to practice kindness in what they do each and every day, and I think that'll make a world of difference in the world.
Yeah. What I would have answered to that question was no discrimination on what's right and wrong.
Right.
And yeah, what you said, like the kindness, and everyone was kind to each other.
Well, and a little bit of no judgment, right? No judgment, and I think that's really important too. But I just, and also the other thing is, I think there just is so much pressure on our young people these days, and I just want young people to have a little fun, right?
Yeah.
You want to have fun.
I want to have fun. Yeah.
Right. But you could be serious too. But there's just so much pressure. So I think for James, you and your friends work hard, but also understand you can have a little bit of fun, right?
Yeah. What would the world be like without credit unions?
I think it'd be a sad, dark place. I think, because I think credit unions are really, really important for our financial system. I think they provide great products and services and customer care for people that really need great customer care. They're nonprofits, and I think that's great because once they conduct all their business, they work hard to give money back to the community and back to members, and I also think they provide much needed financial help to people, and I think that's great, and I think that's what people need now, don't you?
Yeah.
I also believe that credit unions are becoming more and more of the preferred financial solution or the choice for people because they care and they do the right thing.
Yeah. So credit unions are like a bank, only better.
Credit unions are like banks, only they care more, right? And they're better. Absolutely. I think that's a great point. What do you think of credit unions?
I think they're very cool because everyone I know that's cool works for them. So
well, I think you know what? I think they're cool. Not only do you know a lot of cool people that work there, but I think they're cool because they care about people. Talked about the world being a more caring, understanding place. I think they care for people, and I think that's pretty cool in this time. I think that's pretty cool in this business world right now, don't you?
And I know people volunteer to be the boss on the board of directors. Like my grandpa, he was on the board of directors for 15 years. We have his picture on our wall.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing, like what your grandpa did and others, is what's cool about that is they're volunteers. Right? I mean, you know, and I think that's great, and they give their time and their energy to make the credit union a better place, and that's really neat. That is the ultimate cool, I think, don't you?
Yeah. Because I mean, you don't have to do it, but they spend their time to be able to help.
Well, I think that's the beauty. I think that's the beauty of credit unions, right? The volunteerism and people like your grandpa who gives his time to make the place better. That's really neat. I also think I think they're cool because not only do they help people, but they continue to teach people about your credit union, and your grandpa will tell you your credit union will have meetings and seminars on how to buy a house, how to start a business, all this kind of stuff, and that's pretty cool. I think that's great.
Free education and working with the community, that's awesome. But does that make them cool? Cooler than a bank?
I think that because they're in the community all the time and because they're offering all these unique seminars and meetings, it qualifies as being cool to me because they're getting people ready to do the next best thing in their lives. So I think that's pretty cool. Let me ask you a question, James. What do you think? What do you think credit unions need to do to be ready for you?
I think that they need to create different programs and businesses to help people. Like my grandma has a program, a network for helping women. I think we should have one for helping children, to like get them schooling and learning and food and water, all the basic needs to survive and become great people when they grow up.
I think that's a great answer. I think the other thing that we've got to do to get ready for you is all you guys are great with your phones and great with your gaming systems and great with tablets you play on, and we've got to be able to provide, so when you want to get some money, when you want to learn about money, when you want to save money, when you have your own account, we got to let you do that on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer. And we're doing that. We're investing in that kind of technology. Credit unions are investing in that kind of technology. And we also, I mean, you're cool because you're like credit unions, and you're cool because you're smart. But we've also got to teach you and your friends, you know, financial literacy, and that's what credit unions do. A lot of us in the credit union industry support financial literacy, so that when you get ready, you're going to know how to manage all that money you're going to have, so you can take care of your mom and your dad in their old age.
Yeah.
How's that sound?
Yeah. Yeah. Credit unions can also help preserve my piggy bank money to keep it safe.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to pay for things like my mom does on her phone or debit card.
Yep.
And it'd be awesome to be able to deposit cash using a phone or computer.
And just so you know, that's going on now. You should be able to do that. And at CUNA Mutual, as a provider of services to credit unions, we're providing, you know, technology that's going to allow you to get a car loan right over your phone. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Can you drive now? You want to get a loan? You want to get a car loan, James? And I'll deliver the Porsche to you later today. How's that sound?
Great.
Yeah. You want a convertible?
Yeah, sure.
I heard no in the background. So, but that wasn't coming from you, was it?
Nope.
So I think credit unions have to be ready for you and all of your friends. And I think we're getting ready to do that. And I just got to tell you one final thing. I'm really, really impressed with your awareness of credit unions, your intelligence, and we're going to be ready to hire you when you get ready to come into the working world, okay?
Okay. Are you ready for me?
You know what? We have to be ready for you. We don't have any choice. So we'll be ready for you anytime you're ready to come. How's that sound?
That sounds great.
Well, so look, when you're ready for a job, come work in the credit union industry and come work for CUNA Mutual, James. Really, it was a pleasure getting to know you and getting to meet you. And thanks for what you're doing for credit unions. And I really enjoyed our conversation. And do me a favor, have a great summer, okay?
Okay, I will. I really thank you for the offer. We need to start negotiating because I'm going to need Fridays off.
You know what? Not only am I going to give you your Fridays off, but when you get a little older, maybe we'll talk about mimosas. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Take care, James. Thank you.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
That was fun. I loved meeting Mr. Trenzo, and he seemed like a really big deal. He asked me what I would do if I were a CEO. That was cool. When I finish college, I'm going to reach out to CUNA Mutual Group for a job. Be ready. It sounds like a good place to work.
James, it was incredible hearing you ask questions and hearing what credit unions mean to society. It would be a dark, sad place without credit unions. Let's learn more about why and how credit unions in the United States help people. Here we go.
I like the fact that you are involving children in the effort. That's great. Exposure at an early age, I think, is a very positive thing, and it really provides a sense of hope for me about the future, as well as future citizens and leadership here within our country and across North America and the world.
Border towns are very unique because the way we operate is we have that connection with Mexico. There is definitely a connection. Even anytime there's a disruption in the border, whether it will be the port of entry being closed, it disrupts the economy in the border towns. Like right now, people are not able to come shopping from Mexico. Therefore, our retailers are suffering here in town. And so there's always a disruption. I just feel that for us as credit unions, we need to be innovative. Yes, because I think if our members move away, we need to have the tools that they can still be served by us wherever they go. But I feel that the only border that we have is the lack of us to be progressive or attentive to our members' needs. And that's where we need to focus. We need to make sure that we don't establish borders for ourselves.
It's really about supporting, nurturing, helping to grow. And, it's my belief that if some of those rural credit unions weren't there, we would have banking deserts. And that would be a tragedy for rural America, for folks who would have to drive 50 or 100 miles to get to the nearest financial institution. So I really take that seriously, that we need to ensure that those financial services, those low-cost credit union financial services are available in these communities, because that may be the only choice. And we don't, frankly, there's an argument that maybe that would be better served by fintechs, but I still believe that a community-based financial institution is a really important part of the fabric of any community.
I think of WBRT, Federal Credit Union. The reason they started was for racial issues down there. There was a teachers credit union, but then WBRT was for the Black folks who weren't allowed to participate in other financial institutions. And you think of stories like that, and that credit union, it was founded back in the 50s, still here today. It's only 2 million in assets, but they're still focused on that same segment of, these are the people that we need to serve because they're not getting served anywhere else. So you think of stories like that, whether it's for racial equality, financial equality. The credit unions we work with are very passionate about their mission, and it varies. It's not always just based on finance. It's not always just based on race. I think of Columbine Federal Credit Union that serves the power sports industry. And, thinking of that as underserved, no one else wants you to use motorcycle loans there. And they found a very good niche of serving people who have a dream of owning a motorcycle. They can't afford a brand new one. So it's been fun to watch some of these credit unions repurpose themselves or refocus back in on why they were founded and serve people who just can't get that service somewhere else.
I personally believe in the value and the role of a small credit union for many reasons. Mostly because they're able to connect with their members at a level that, while we, I think, do a good job, it will never be the same as a small local credit union that knows its members, that knows its demographics, that knows the unique needs that are going on and can respond and can sit around a table and make those decisions together. And I think that the more we uplift that ability, the stronger the movement becomes, because then we're speaking a collective language of being there for people's financial needs in a way that is inclusive of everybody's.
I'm really amazed. I think back on, I think back on my career and the wonderful opportunities I had, and thinking that I was not enough from time to time, and that I needed to somehow be more because of who I was, and not always being able to be my authentic self because of that fear. I see on our calls with the See You Pride group, these young people that are trans or very alternative in their appearance or their choices, and they are in Kansas, in Arkansas, and Montana, and they are making a difference in their credit unions, opening eyes, making huge steps forward that if they weren't there, probably wouldn't happen. And so from that standpoint, the whatever generation you're from, whether it's a brand new person starting in the credit union industry, someone that's worked their way into middle management, somebody that's a CEO or a board member, I think that the opportunity for the LGBTQ plus community to be able to take our pride and make it a big way to contribute to the success of your credit union is priceless. The opportunity to stand up and make sure that folks are served with dignity and with respect, that there is no discrimination in hiring practices, that there is no discrimination at the board level. The opportunities are still huge, but the current crop of people that I see coming up in our industry, they'd be proud.
And the new way is to judge people, judge our leaders, not by how they look, but how they think and how they feel, and if they're of a good heart. Let's truly diversify and choose leaders based on the content of their character. That's more complex, that's more difficult, that requires more discussion. But it's worth it, because that is our future. And I'm counting on the African American Credit Union Coalition to show us the way on that. And by the way, you want to start a small revolution along that line, picking people based on the content of their character. The next time you are given a form, one of those forms to fill out, when you get down to the race question, skip on down to other and just write in human. And of course, when you get to the gender and sex question, skip on down below male and female and just write yes.
Fill in the blank. The world would be a better place if...
Wow, great question, James. And we could go pretty broad in this answer. I'll say, to me, the world would be a better place if everyone would show compassion, be more tolerant, patient of one another, and kind, and, in daily interactions, just be better with people.
If everyone had the chance to live in another country.
What would the world be like without credit unions?
A world without credit unions is a world that misses out on financial wellness opportunities for all. I think, to use an analogy for your rising sixth grade status and your move up in grades, I would say, bullying is a very prominent topic. And I'd say that the larger banks, financial institutions like that, kind of bully your financial situation to work for them. And I'd say a credit union takes your financial institution or your financial situation and works to make it work for you.
It would be a very dark place. All of us would be paying more for services, and we would have less access, much less access.
Are credit unions cool?
Are you kidding? They are absolutely cool. What kind of business model is there? Credit unions and co-ops where everyone wins. Everyone wins together. Yes, it's totally cool.
Absolutely, credit unions are cool. I think the reason credit unions are cool is because they are adapting their business to your generation. I think you learn a different way, and credit unions are passionate about that, and they are there to be a resource for you, and for that reason it makes them cool.
Are you ready for me?
You know what? I better be, and I'm really excited about it.
I will say, not only are we ready for you, we are expecting you. The way our credit union system and all of the partners that work with credit unions have adapted their business, it is pointed right at you. So, you know, people your generation will be able to connect with the credit union in the way that it works best. And again, not losing sight of ensuring that you have a successful financial future. That's why we're ready for you, expecting you, and we'll be ready to welcome you.
I'm so excited to be here with you live, and thank you so much for joining us. We have a sense of urgency around conversations that will push the industry forward, create change, and challenge our leadership to build relevancy of credit unions. For this collision, you can tell we are focusing on the next generation. According to UNICEF, there are 1.2 billion children between the ages of 10 and 19, making up 16% of the world's population. They will be establishing first-time relationships based upon organizational social impact. Are we ready? Are leaders willing to be vulnerable? As we plan for the next 5 years, think about the fact that that 11-year-old will be your future member. The next generation expects to be heard. They want a place to belong and be part of an organization that's authentic. There is a new way, and it's about the human connection, putting the heart into the business. Personal service is not limited to in-person or to digital. It's about the community, a place to belong. Community is not geographic. It's a social connection, as we have seen with the groups coming together on important issues this year. The data shows that financial institutions, including our credit unions, are falling behind fintechs. Why? Many think it's because we can't spend enough on technology. Many consider it the strongest will survive. Well, how many of us think about how society is changing and decisions are being made long before 16? The next generation has spent the last 18 months navigating the world. They want us to step up and truly make a difference. Are we striving for a demographic that has moved on, or are we positioning for the future? Ideas into action. 1, use a new language that speaks to the future generation. It's not about literacy, it's about financial control. It's not words, it's action. 2, discover authentic vulnerability and seek voices that are diverse, intuitive, and relevant. Number 3, the world is a dark place without credit unions. Show it, measure your impact, and instill a sense of urgency that reflects the times we will never be the same again. It's a new day. If we do that, then credit unions will be cool.
Amazing. I know that my family loves credit unions, and now I know why. They are special. Are they around the world? When we travel, I get to see how people live in other places. In my school, we study different countries to learn more about cultures. My friends visit their families and tell me things as well. I want to learn about credit unions all across the globe.
Yes, all of your generation should know about credit unions. When we volunteer to support the World Council through projects in other countries, we get to know people in their communities, and we exchange ideas that promote financial democracy. Not everyone has an opportunity, but credit unions give hope.
I remember a very, very serious moment, a very daunting moment for me was working with credit unions in Uganda and building these credit unions, helping to update them. And there was a community in northern Uganda near the Sudan border who came to Kampala, met with us. They wanted us to help them start a credit union, and we said, well, we can't do it because you're in a conflict zone, it's dangerous, and we can't travel up there. And they insisted that they really wanted this for their communities. So we had to work outside of the existing project we were implementing at the time because it was not supported by the donor to work in that area, but we were able to use movement resources to help them start a credit union up in this northern community. And I remember driving up there once. We had to drive up there during the day and then drive back before night because it was not safe to be on the roads after dark. And on one of these trips, we were late leaving the credit union. And as we were leaving the credit union, all these children started coming into the credit union grounds. And I said, well, is there you having a party? You having some kind of education program for the kids? You know, and they looked at me and they said, well, no. At the credit union, we have walls and we have an armed guard. And this is an area where the rebels would kidnap children and force them to serve in their army. And so the family in the outlying rural areas would send their kids into town to spend the night sleeping on the grounds of the credit union so that they would be safe and the children then could go to school the next day. And for me, it was just one of those moments when you think, you know, that the lives that we lead without that kind of pressure, that kind of danger, are very privileged. And here is another opportunity where credit union is not only about financial services and a beacon of stability, but a beacon.
What we've seen across the continent is the resilience that women have shown. I've had a couple of comments, people saying, yes, there's restriction, but I have to go work as a woman to get food for my family. So I rather choose to die without food or find a way of surviving in this pandemic. And I've seen that across, even in West Africa, East Africa, and that shows most of our households are actually being held by the women in one form or the other. But they perhaps get less recognition on that part. This period has shown that the strength of the household is actually within the women.
The feeling of belongingness makes huge creative for people. And we are really happy that even 22 years ago, we respected diversity. As you know, we put even in our bylaws that we will make sure that our association will be representative as regional. So we have always diversity from the regions. It is representative from women, how much women we have. We want to make sure that they are representative everywhere. How much ethnicity we have. Also, we have a representation for a different ethnicity. So this is how we feel that people believe us in all these 22 years, because they realize that whoever make the decisions are the same as me, if I am from other region, or the same as me from the ethnicity. So I'm really happy that we had this opportunity further to explore this concept for the future benefit for everybody.
In the past, credit unions have been
I speak for the credit unions in the UK because I know the credit unions in America are a lot bigger, and technology is a really big part in how you serve the members in the USA. But with the UK, I know that, and I think this is a question at board level as well, is how do we engage with members and the community and deliver a service for everyone? And it's been a huge game changer, and I'm so happy to have been a part of it and being able to see a new way of working. I've been within my credit union for the past 7 years, and it really is, it's so nice to see that we're able to open our doors virtually instead of just physically. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's really good.
And I think for Brazil and for our profile, it is very important. Recently, we launched our youth committees program, and it was inspired in the sister society model and the Global Women's Leadership Network. And what we see is they love to get connected with the digital platforms and the iPhones and these kind of things, but there's something that is deeper than that, that is purpose and that is values. And that's why and how we are trying to connect our young generation as well. We are trying to engage this generation. We have a 2-year program that they are going to get engaged. We built lots of things with gamification using digital platforms and these kind of things. And when we presented to this generation, so some of them said, but we want to get in a, how can I say, in a physical place, in a room, and to chat with each other. So I think this is the magic about the credit unions, that we also have the digital platforms. We are connected to that. It's very important. Otherwise, we are not going to keep our business, the sustainability of our business. But I think this person and in person and these things that we have, these global communities, is something amazing.
There are credit unions that are not offering this, or I think the major challenge that we found out is the digital illiteracy of the most of the members of credit unions. Even the credit unions have digital channels to access financial services. There's we see a low uptake of the members, low usage of the digital channels because of the digital illiteracy. I think it's because they are catering on the low level, low income people, and in the future, I think credit unions need to really work very hard in order to educate members on how to use mobile apps.
We put together a sustainability report every 2 years. Part of that is a sort of employee profile, and we asked where everyone was born and what languages they were fluent in at home. And that was done pretty recently. And of our 160 employees, we have 50 who were born outside of Australia. But the 50 people who were born overseas, they're from 25 different countries. The main ones, Fiji, China, India, New Zealand, Philippines, and Vietnam. And our employees, and this was astounding to me, are fluent in 37 different languages. The most spoken is Hindi, Arabic, Chinese, Italian, and Vietnamese. But we have the common ones like French, German, Greek, Spanish, Portuguese. But we also have, and I noted a couple of these down, Turkish, Ukrainian, Urdu, Rwandan, Ibo, which is a Nigerian language, Sinhalese from Sri Lanka, and Zulu.
We worked in Afghanistan to start credit unions there, and a country where there was tremendous need and very different culture, and the interest operations of a credit union that we're used to in so many other countries, certainly in the US, wouldn't work in Afghanistan. We had to create an Islamic model for credit unions, where you couldn't pay interest for deposits, you couldn't charge interest for loans, and it worked. And the credit unions cooperative system, cooperative values, investment in the community fit very well into that Afghanistan context. And even in a society in that kind of civil conflict, credit unions took root. Other institutions, microfinance institutions, banks came in, didn't last. The credit unions are still there. And we're doing conference calls with the Afghan credit unions today, talking about this new peace process. How's that going to affect them? How's it going to affect their ability to support their communities?
如果世界上各个国家、各个民族能够相互尊重、互相学习、取长补短，合作面对人类共同的问题和挑战，这个世界将变得更加美好。
The world would be a better place if we all take a snapshot of where we are right now and think how grateful we are for the connections that we have in our lives. And that makes us better human beings. It certainly makes us better leaders within this movement.
If we can all come together and work towards equity.
Si pudiéramos tener a todos nuestros socios en un programa de consultoría.
We have more listeners. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You should listen more than you talk.
Θα αρχίσω με τα ελληνικά μου και θα σας πω το εξής. Ότι νομίζω θα είχαμε έναν καλύτερο κόσμο αν πραγματικά καθόμασταν και σκεφτόμασταν λίγο από μέσα τους εαυτούς μας και σκεφτόμασταν για τους θεούς και τις θεές και ποιους έχουμε μέσα στην ψυχή μας και ποια είναι τα χαρακτηριστικά που πραγματικά μας κάνουν να είμαστε αυτό που είμαστε σήμερα. Ωραία.
If more people would concentrate on taking care of each other and the world we live in.
El mundo sería mejor si fuéramos más cooperativos, juntos.
If diversity, equality, and inclusion are taking central stage in our lives.
Este mundo sería un lugar mejor si tenemos las cooperativas de crédito para levantar a todas las personas a un nivel más igualitario de oportunidad y de riquezas.
We use our voices in unity to focus on equity for everyone.
If we had more diverse voices in our spheres.
誰もが他の国に住むことができれば、世界はずっと良くなるでしょう。
More of us were more compassionate.
Cuando establamos un diálogo y aprendemos sobre nuestros puntos en común, creo que podemos crear un camino para la paz.
We would just deal with our personal issues surrounding fear and conflict.
अगर गरीब आदमी की थाली में थोड़ा ज़्यादा फल हो तो और अमीर आदमी के शैम्पू में थोड़ा कम फल हो तो बहुत अच्छा होगा और ये जो भूख है दुनिया में वो ख़त्म हो जाएगी.
We keep our purpose pure and right.
Well, why do we care about the global credit union community? If we think in terms of delivery channels, worldwide credit unions touch 1 billion lives. Now that's a story to tell. The global community brings us back to the roots of the credit union philosophy. Real people helping real people to have a better life. As we've seen from the global credit union thought leaders, cooperatives offer more than financial services. They offer safety, both physical and emotional security. The very core of a credit union is in its diverse field of membership and employee base. It's in our DNA. Credit union systems have revitalized economies. This is not limited to lesser developed countries. This is relative to our neighbors throughout the United States. Understand the impact and the potential to make a difference, as it is a lesson that can be learned through connecting the system. Ideas into action. 1. Learn more about the World Council of Credit Unions and the Worldwide Foundation. It's the way for your employees and your members to further understand the purpose of social connection and the unique position of credit unions. A key idea for recruiting and in retaining employees as well. Donate your time and your financial resources to allow your employees and members to be part of an exchange program. And most of all, use the power of a united voice, connecting 1 billion people worldwide cannot be ignored. Tap into this opportunity, as it is urgent to be relevant and bridge the divide within society. Experiencing another culture is the best way to learn and examine why we are all beautiful humans. CUNA Mutual Group has committed to match up to $1 million of donation from credit unions to the Worldwide Foundation. In 2021, as a board member, I know the metrics, I know the impact, and I've seen firsthand the difference that we can make to ourselves and to our credit unions by experiencing the impact of credit unions around the world. Why invest globally versus local only? Because our connections to the root and purpose of credit unions and our exposure to the importance they make will differentiate us and give a life-changing experience to your employees. In today's recruiting dilemma, why not give the gift that keeps on giving to your people, members, and to the world by seeing it side by side? Y'all know that the registration for the underground was free. Why not take a moment and make a donation to the Worldwide Foundation by going to woccuwoku.org. Click on the Worldwide Foundation and make a small donation or a large donation, but tell them the Underground sent you in the comments section, and we will demonstrate what we've learned today can pay it forward to people all over the world.
Wow! Credit unions are more than banks. They save people, help them recover from disasters, and achieve their dreams. I know I want to make a difference too. Maybe I can connect with kids in other places around the world. I bet there are other kids listening who will want to connect. Next, we have a special segment with Sue and a couple of underground partners, Gary Singleton and Shazia Manis. They are so smart.
Ellie also, she's the CEO of Flume, and World Council helped them start that system. But she also brought up the fact that they decided their entire focus for 2020 was about keeping their employees, their members, and themselves safe. And so the initiatives went on to say, she said there is, when we talk about DEI initiatives, she used the term digital exclusion.
Wow.
And it really resonated with me because she articulated the fact that we're all connected digitally and we have cell phones and there's all of this movement in that direction. But in the process of that, the people that don't have access to a digital communication asset are in a position where they're being excluded without us even necessarily thinking mindfully about that. And so then I another big idea, right? why, instead of, you remember the days when we would give bonuses to people or credit unions to sign up or for members to join the organization? Why aren't we thinking about giving cell phones? Why aren't we collectively saying, what is the means of communication today? Cell phones, and we're looking at mobile apps, but we have to get to the root cause. And the root cause comes back to actually having access.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail in the head. I mean, every credit unions, I mean, obviously by a region, by geography, you know, your context is obviously outside US, but even within US, I mean, there's large constituent of population still have the flip phones, you know, so do not have that that digital connectivity, so to speak. So if within the movement we give incentive for opening accounts or certain type of, I mean, everybody runs promotions and campaign. So how can we maybe incenting different type of loyalty bill strategy? Those are great ideas and concept. And sometimes that inspiration comes from outside. So I think these are very valid way of looking at the reward and the incentive, what we really want to drive towards, more connectivity and more engagement.
So not just the access of connectivity by having the device itself, but also having the networks and the ability to access them. I know that's something our industry as a whole is looking at, not only in the US, but it's also a global challenge, is access to broadband.
Yep.
Right? And we saw that during the pandemic for so many kids doing virtual school from home. Well, access to broadband for members and for our communities. I live in Montana, and there's some very rural areas here where there is no good connectivity or good access. And so I know as an industry, that's one of the things that we've been advocating for. So not only at the credit union level could we provide devices, but we could also at the industry level provide advocacy to kind of fight for additional infrastructure or things like that to support broadband across the country and obviously at a global level as well.
There's your integration, if you will, of human science with digital and the human behaviors, that it creates a sense of disconnection, which emotionally then has a toll. And I, like you, have been reading about what's going to happen with assimilation when we go back to work. And those of us that have gotten used to working from home, or, you know, children being at home, and the potential for what it's going to take to go back into the world. And so we had talked previously about kind of the hierarchy of humans. So how do you think this is the intersection of technology and the human science behind it? I'll start with Gary and then I'll come to you, Shazia.
I think of how many people don't have that choice. Right? Going to your question, the vulnerable, right? The vulnerable, the underrepresented, the folks in areas and they don't have an ability to get out to have that connectivity and those kinds of things. And the control that the loss of control maybe that they feel. I heard a speaker last year who talked about the need to understand the visibility of our voice. Right. And I think Shazia, you and Sue both have these great voices in the industry, and people listen, and we have a responsibility, right? We have a mandate, if you will, to use our voices. And then I think the opposite is also true. How many people in our society are invisible, right? And therefore their voices are not heard. And what is our responsibility as an industry, as a movement, right? What is our responsibility to make sure that those voices are heard, so that then when we talk about connectivity, we talked about access to financial services, that it's for everybody, including the vulnerable and for the voiceless. And how do we become that voice for them? That's kind of the thing that is going through my mind as we're talking.
Yeah, I think as at a core level, as human being, that connectivity, the human connectivity is a core. It's a core. I mean, you know, there's been, I'm sure there's going to be more research. We'll find out the implications of the seclusion, as well as the whole pandemic related, how it kind of shaped the psychological or behavioral dynamics in children and so on and so forth, yet to know, right, from that piece. But I said at an innate level, we want to be connected. And when that core need is somehow disrupted or compromised, it leads to a series of stress and trauma and all of those. I think we need to create a world where we can allow those accessibility to bring people together, and recognizing connectivity is a core human need that we have. And we cannot, if it is disrupted, it will have unintentional implication on the society.
If we think about the stress and anxiety and the worry and the things that people have gone through over the last 18 months or so, we talk a lot about ideas into action, right? That's a big part of what this conversation is all about, is ideas into action. I think of three things, just real quickly. They're very simple. Three things maybe for our industry, for credit unions to think about. One is a term called internal locus of control, right? So controlling those things that we can control. There's so much of the world right now that's out of our control. And when you think about finance, right, and people's finances, is there something credit unions can do to put more financial control in the hands of more people in ways that work for them, right? So I think of internal locus of control. What can credit unions do? What can our industry do? What can we do to help put more financial control in the hands of people? So that's one thing they can check the box. The second one is, I think, of biofeedback, right? Our bodies they're talking to us all the time. And they're, over the last years, Sue, I know you've talked about mental health and the toll of the pandemic on mental health. But what are our bodies telling us? What's self-awareness? And what can credit unions do, even around those, some things going through my mind around the biofeedback or self-awareness? What are some things that credit unions could do to help? We know there's a connection to finance, right? Financial well-being and physical health and mental health. Credit unions have a role to play in all of those things, obviously with our strength, superpowers around financial health. And then the third one is the one we've already talked about, and that's the importance of connection. What can credit unions do? What can we do to connect people, to bring them together in ways that, again, leverage our superpowers as an industry? So I think if we can find ways to reduce anxiety, reduce the stress, and finance is where we play. So how can we do it in the financial realm?
You made me think of the flight or fight.
Absolutely.
Right? And the idea that if I shut down and I'm afraid, I'm not going to learn. I'm not going to be open. And so all of these things play a role when it comes to the progression of society.
Yeah, I loved those three very crisp, the control, the self-awareness, the biofeedback, and the connection. I think that it starts with the intention. We touched a little bit around you can be intentional of having a holistic view and versus or. That's an intentional choice, which you can control, because I can control how I'm going to allow my mind and body to be hopeful, to be helpful. On that front, with all of the social unrest and really bringing in the forefront some of the systemic racial injustice and equality we have, one of the places could be what I can control is taking a stance in the middle and say, I'm going to go for a position of love and equity. If we can all take a stance towards unity, towards love, and recognizing that healing is the path to kind of creating a new world, that there is a wound, so let's not be in denial, recognize the wound, and the only way to get out of the wound is to heal. And that is centered in that limbic brain. When we were up in the cave days, and when you look somebody who looked different, the first thing I would have, where did you come from? Don't take my food, right? So that's essentially, and now obviously we live in a different world. We have different people, different culture, and yet our limbic brain is still catching on. What the brain is wired for is equity. Because again, that goes back to the cave days. I mean, we all hunted together. So if Gary were given more food than Gary's lack of survival depend on my own survival. So the brain is wired for that. So maybe that's one way of equity could be a focus, and diversity could be more of a measurement to really determine where we are in terms of creating an inclusive culture.
Absolutely. And Shazia, as you were talking, it made me think of the word belonging. when you think of equity. I was reading recently, there are 1 billion people in the world right now who are starving, and there are 1 billion people in the world who are obese. How do we, from an equity perspective, how do we start to balance that out? And I think of belonging versus othering, right? I read a fascinating article about belonging versus othering. And the challenge was, and I think the challenge for us as an industry is, how do we bring structures to light in our credit union industry or credit union system to ensure they focus on belonging and not othering? And we should look at our products, our systems, our recruiting, right, for talent. If we start going down a leadership path, how we're developing leaders, how we're bringing leaders along, how do we do that to make sure that they're benefiting people? And if we're benefiting somebody, that means somebody might be burdened.
That requires us to have open minds, right?
Yeah.
And be exposed. And that whole idea of diversity of thought. There was an article actually today in the American Banker talking about human experience and how do we build human experience into our delivery channels when we've all become more digital. And we talked briefly about the idea of artificial intelligence is based upon experiences that people are programming in. So if they don't know, as Gary said, they don't know what they don't know, it's very difficult for us to determine whether we are establishing equity, equitable systems. And so the question becomes, how do we then in turn engage others that will know it at a different level or in a different way so that we build their experiences into it? And maybe that's what we're referring to here when we talk about equity of thought, bring people in to share those thoughts so that our systems become programmed differently. Now we look at our World Council of Credit Unions touching 1 billion lives worldwide. We have this system that we could be doing more with. And so what challenge would you put out to all of us, Shazia, about how we can use data to not only economically prosper, but also to really have an impact on society?
It is a global world connectivity, whether you may live in a region, but you rely on services. You may outsource your certain functions, certain capability, technology, contracting. It is a diverse global that your existence and your success depends on that. If you really want to digitally outreach and reach out, whether connect a particular constituent with access to services, financial awareness, disseminate tools or capability or resource, whatever that might be, you have to collect, datafy those inputs and outputs and then act on it.
I'll go back to a couple of the hammer points we talked about earlier, is that understanding the visibility of our voices. How do we as an industry use our voice and use it powerfully and to speak out and to speak up? I think that is really, really important. The second one that ties directly to it, Shaz, I think you mentioned this earlier, transformational versus transactional. Financial services is very transactional as the tasks, but our leaders, we need to be transformational leaders. We need to really focus on that. I think we need to use our voices and we need to be transformational leaders, and we need to know that others are watching us so that we're consistently walking the talk.
Do adults always make good role models?
Not always. Os adultos? No. The adults that just throw trash like on the ground. I don't care. Adults are very careless.
I feel like they need to be more considerate about our future.
Most of them don't listen a lot to the child. Go back to your room. Yeah, we'll try to get that sorted out, but they don't do anything about it. Acho que eles me ouviriam mais se eu ficasse mais velha. We are people. There's no difference between a child and an adult, just height.
I think grown-ups can learn many different things from kids, but something that I always say is that as kids, they are pure. When they are born, they have already a connection to nature, and they lose this connection throughout lives.
I want my generation to enjoy the environment. I want to make a change in the world. By being a superhero, that makes me feel stronger to stop bad people from doing bad stuff.
We kids, when we speak the truth. We speak from our hearts. We are not speaking because we want money or because we want something. We are speaking because we know that that's what it's being needed.
Uma pessoa que inspira, na minha opinião, é uma pessoa que faz o bem.
I feel like a role model is someone that you aspire to be, someone that you find truth in, someone that you agree with their opinions.
Do you consider yourself a role model?
Yes. Eu me acho. Eu me acho modelo. I don't know. For some people, I think I am a role model.
I mean, I do see myself as a role model.
I do consider myself a role model. Do you? Yes, I am a role model. Os meus amigos acham que eu faço coisas boas. Any age, really. And you'll still be a role model. A kid, yes, can change the future.
I really hope, or I know that the youth will change the world and we will be able to tackle these issues and we will not have this crisis in the future.
Have a passion, something that you're strong about, and go for it.
Wow, I'm so excited to be live with the two of you and to further our discussion. I was thinking about the generations that have been represented, and I have a few notes here. As we were preparing for the underground, I wanted to reach out to the activists and ask them to engage with us directly. Before I did that, I realized that we have to be ready. We have to be honest. We have to have open minds because they'll see the truth about credit unions. So the kids are asking adults to be authentic and aspirational, giving them hope to be good role models. So Shazia, what truths did you learn from these discussions on a personal level? And then Gary, I'll come back to you at that point after Shazia shares.
Absolutely. It was such a wonderful to kind of observe and kind of contextualize. So two things. One was this notion of, as I reflect back, is being intentional and be very self-aware on listening. And when I mean by listening, not only listening, but also observing through my eyes and taking it in. And the second dimension of that is unpacking and contextualizing. What does it mean, what they're saying and what I'm observing them, how does it relate to their context? How does it relate to their environmental facet that they are at? And what does it mean for how do I react to that? The second piece would be all around this notion of hopefulness, abundance, because I can control that. And that means going back to this role model question, the way the kids responded, they consider themselves a role model. And I had to kind of sit on that a little bit myself. And I realized it's the beginner's mind. Because when you think about it, in a beginner's mind, there's so many possibilities, whereas in the expert's mind, there's few. And as we go through the adulthood, we do develop some preconceived beliefs and notions. So I have to empty my mind to really anchor on that beginner's mind, that childlike symptoms and that innocence and the vulnerability.
Absolutely. Shazia, that is spot on. From the whole morning, all the sessions spoke to me in so many ways. And there's a lot to unpack. And personally, I'm going to be probably unpacking them for a while. My initial reactions, though, especially with the role model conversation with the kids, if I'm honest, I want to say I'm a role model. Mm-hmm. I want to make a difference, right? I want to use my voice in the credit union movement in ways that make a difference. But if I'm honest, if I'm really honest, I think if I asked the kids, they would say, you're looking at me, you're nodding your head and you're smiling, but you're not listening. You're not hearing what I'm saying and then doing something about it. And so I think that's the heart part for me today that I need to really kind of unpack and think about. When I think of being in the credit union movement, I ask myself a couple questions. The first one is, what inspired me to join this experiment, this thing called credit unions? What inspired me to do it? Now, if you're like me, most of us stumbled into it. We stumbled into credit unions, and then something got a hold of us and didn't let go, and now suddenly it's 30 years later. So what inspired you to get involved in credit unions? And then the second question is, what makes your heart sing? In other words, what got you here and what keeps you here? Because my life's motto is, I want to make a difference in the world. When I heard all these young activists talking, that's exactly what they want. They want to make a difference. And so I wonder out loud if we all can hone in on those things. Inspiration and passion. What makes our hearts sing? Are those the same things that make the young people's hearts sing? And are we communicating in a language that we can resonate with together so that we can together make a difference in the world? And it's going to take a whole lot of listening, truly listening and hearing in order to make that happen.
It's fascinating. So I want to do a follow-up with you. You know me. When we look to the future and we start to examine how do you engage youth activists, right? And you think about the honesty and, as you said, that raw way of speaking. Yeah. We're so packaged today.
Conditioned.
We have a tendency to want to keep the conversation within lanes. We want to have these boundaries. And I think early in the session, Maria talked about boundaries of the mind. And that resonated with me because it came back to the fact that, am I really open? Am I really willing to listen? Or am I going to fall back into patterns? And I believe that right now, with what's taking place in the world, we all have been so uncomfortable that being able to know comfort again in our own way may stop us from that next level. So, couple thoughts?
Yeah, I think that goes back to this notion of abundance, hopefulness, and choosing words, because words becomes your thoughts and becomes your action and reality. So if on that dimension, a world of a world of abundant possibilities, a world of belonging, though the way we more think about it, the way we emulate it, that's what resonates. So we have to go back, and that only comes by emptying some of those conditioning that we may have been accustomed to, part of our adulthood. We have to empty our mind to be able to make a little bit space to absorb newness, that rawness, that authenticity, that vulnerability, and just emulate that, because that's what people touches. And digital connectivity is all about authenticity, because it's not that face-to-face eye contact anymore. So you have to touch the heart, and you have to be sincere.
Absolutely. I love that concept of no boundaries as well. And I think of, too, in hearing the young people talk, that sense of awe and the sense of wonder. And how do we have that in our industry? I guess if we do a little self-reflection, Sue, I wonder, do we have that sense of awe and that sense of wonder? And if so, we should. And if so, how do we instill that out into the world? I think of magic, for example. I like to do magic tricks. It's kind of fun to do, and people love it and kids love it. When you're learning the magic trick, though, for you, the one who's learning the trick, sometimes the magic goes away. But what I've learned is by learning the magic myself, I can instill that sense of awe and wonder in so many others. How do we do that as an industry, and especially for the next generation, for young people? How do we instill that sense of awe and wonder?
So what we've said here is it starts with us.
Absolutely.
And us being open. And I put a note to myself that I know that I have to, in order to be trusted, I have to be cognizant, mindful, a part of it. When you work with different groups, you make sure you speak and you sit on the floor and you make sure that you're part of that, right? So we change our behavior to do that. So I put a second concept together, and I thought to myself, so let's ask ourselves, back to your point, Gary, let's ask ourselves, have we learned from an industry perspective to self-reflect upon open minds of leaders? for the future members. And I want to take it one step forward. We're talking disruption. We're talking innovation labs. We're talking about getting this diverse group involved. Are we ready for that? Is the industry ready to really accept innovation that's outside of the lanes?
Ideas into action, so we have to stop talking and start doing more. I loved your notion of the sense of awe. I think the industry, when we started 100 years ago, there was a lot of curiosity, awe, hunger in the belly to go out and take risk and innovate and do all of that. As we have grown, as we have matured, success, I think study shows size, age, success all settles in that comfortness of inertia. We're kind of at that point right now today that we have to find that honest. And so 3 things I will bring up is, one is forget. So the things that it's intentional forgetting, again, going back to that intention, what worked may not work. What brought us here may not take us to the future. So let's try to be very intentional what things we need to forget. What things we might want to borrow, because there are strong roots. There are care of belonging, care, transparency, ethics, empathy. Those things are foundational. Let's carry on those, but maybe package it with different words and different orientation to resonate to the James of the world. And the third dimension is, what do we need to learn? So it's like this notion of unlearn, learn, and forget. We really have to, and that's where the honest, the vulnerability, the authenticity, that beginner's mind, that childlike energy has to come into play. I think we need to really reflect on those 3 dimensions, in what way we are doing those.
Excellent.
Totally agree, Shazi. And just piggybacking a little bit on the disruption conversation, credit unions are known for disruption. We've been disruptors for a really, really long time. When people were marginalized, when people were not able to access financial services, we got together and we formed credit unions, right? Yeah. So we are disruptors by our nature. And I wonder, now we're talking a lot about fintech and other disruptors in there as threats to our movement. And I wonder, what if we ask ourselves the hard question, what if we were the disruptors of ourselves? Yeah. What if we were the disruptors of ourselves? What actions would we take? What would we need to learn, to forget, to unlearn, and then take action and do? I've been thinking a lot about that lately. What would that look like if we were to disrupt ourselves? Interesting concept just to think about. So I have 2 things that I would add to the conversation. One is, we need to acknowledge that young people, we talk about young people as our future, and they are, absolutely. But young people are our right now. Yes. I don't know about you, but when I was 11, I was playing outside and gathering rocks, right? I was collecting rocks, right? Today, these young people have voices. They're using their voices, and they're not afraid to speak up, not only in their spheres or circles of influence, but around the world. We saw in the videos, we saw in the conversations, all those things. So we need, as an industry, to acknowledge these young people are right now. Now, there was some research recently done with them. 7 seconds is what it takes to be interesting to a Gen Y. It takes 7 seconds to be interesting, not to gather their attention, but to be interesting to them. 7 seconds. Now, another study was done on goldfish. You can hold a goldfish attention for 8 seconds. So you can actually hold a goldfish's attention longer than a kid, right? So what are we going to do with our voices and our messaging to make sure we're interesting to young people? So that's the first one. Acknowledge first and foremost that concept, that we need to be interesting to them, and they are our right now. And if we can turn their voices to use their voices for good, which they're doing, and do it for speaking out on behalf of credit unions because they're doing great work for people, that's awesome. The second one I think we need to acknowledge is that the credit union model works. We saw video after video, conversation after conversation, all across the world. The credit union model worked then, and it works now, and it's going to continue to work. I wonder, though, this is my reflection thinking, how are we articulating that model? Are we articulating in a way that young people, it resonates with young people, right? James, when he and Bob were talking early at the opening, James said, I think credit unions are cool because they care and they should work to remove discrimination. Right? That took less than 7 seconds to say that. They care and they work to remove discrimination. And you know what? That's what credit unions were about at the beginning. That's what we're about today, and that's what we'll continue to be about. And I wonder if we've overcomplicated it somehow with our messaging. Mm-hmm. And we're not always speaking the right language, even though we're on the same page. So what can we learn from that, so that we as an industry, as a movement, can continue to be relevant to the next generation, which is our right now.
And that sense of urgency, people say to me, well, you showed kids, right? And they can't even open accounts yet. But as you've indicated, it's now. They're working with their phones. They've got debit cards. Their 10-year-olds are doing this. And so the question becomes, how do we capture that 7 seconds? And that was fascinating for me. So what if the terms become a little bit more active, like financial justice, like financial democracy? Using terms that are relative to the movement, to the social part of making the world better. I know that people will say it's our business to serve the community, and I know that we're in a position to where we stay in those lanes and our messaging stays in those lanes. But what hit us the most during the pandemic? Those commercials and branding where they reached out and they showed people playing horns and people getting together to celebrate life and their connection. And as I look to the future, that 7 seconds is going to be a guiding light for me, because literally I know we have to be ready.
We have work to do, certainly. I think that's one of my big takeaway, and that starts with that reflection awareness. At the same time, being almost approaching 50 years old now, but let's go back to the roots, ask the kids, and that's where not only listening and observing, engaging them, mobilizing them, and being part of defining what should be the language, what should be the narrative that they can relate to. Because some of the things that kids' videos were showing about, they care about environment, they care about the planet, they care about their future. How are we unpacking programs around that? They obviously showed they want to take charge, so that there's strong entrepreneurship. So they just don't want to be reactive and be told by businesses or adults. They want to build it themselves. Let's bring them into, and I heard a lot about discrimination, to your point, and that's all around, they care about belonging. They don't have categories. They don't have segmentations. They are looking for unity. So there's probably an opportunity for us just not only to listen, but mobilize and engage them in creating the narrative and the language that will appeal to that constituent.
And I want to just add a comment. In my comments, I made the note that we have to demonstrate the authenticity before we do the reach out. And once we open this door, there's the potential for people to examine it closer. And are we measuring our impact? Are we demonstrating that we can make a difference? Gary?
Yep. I would say hope pops into my mind. As we heard all the speakers today, the activists, sure, also our credit union leaders globally, I have hope. I have a lot of hope. There's some amazing, talented leaders and individuals who are speaking out on behalf of credit unions because they're speaking out on behalf of people, right? And so I have hope. I have a lot of hope around that. I also am a little uncomfortable. Sue, when you were using words like financial justice and words like financial democracy and we've used words like fight, right? Those are powerful words in our industry, and they're not words necessarily that we're used to. Sometimes we try to, you mentioned swimming in our lanes or staying in our lanes. Sometimes we're so careful with our words. And I know as a person, I'm oftentimes so careful in my words because I don't want to mess it up and I don't want to say the wrong thing, right? And yet I'm uncomfortable with these words, and that is a good thing. In fact, that's a really good thing. I think we should not strive for consensus so much as we do, but really be uncomfortable with it because it's the right thing to do. Because frankly, that's what these young people not only ask of us, they require of us. They demand, maybe that's even stronger. They demand of us to do that. And we can do it. We absolutely can. But it's going to take a whole lot of vulnerability and a whole lot of uncomfortable. You know, I started squirming in my chair just talking about this because it makes me uncomfortable. And I think that's awesome.
I agree. And at the end of the one video, it says, "You have not seen anything yet," which to me was a call to action.
Absolutely.
A call for all of us to get a little uncomfortable and maybe take a look at our practices, as you said, in a new way. And look at it not from the standpoint that we haven't been successful, because we are, right? We saw that. The global connection reinforces that message for me, because 1 billion people that we touch worldwide, we have a huge delivery channel. If we put it in business terms, right? We have a way of getting the message out. And you mentioned social media. We know that we've seen the bank transfer day, right?
Yes.
We've seen social media have an impact. We just have to find the language to make that happen. And you talked about the idea of kind of the different sizes and assets of credit unions and their approach to their communities, right?
Yes.
And as that evolves, what does that look like? So any thoughts on that, Shazia, for our industry leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, we have a strong root. So let's expand the roots, just not go vertically, but go horizontally. And that will come from trying new things, building new programs, maybe going into the lanes that historically we haven't been. Some of the basic necessity type of support. I mean, you talked about care, safety. It's not emotional security, but also physical security, financial security. How do we manifest those through proof points of programs that reaches our boundaries around building community? But ultimately, it's the connection and amplification of the messaging and mobilizing. And that's the beauty of social media. We have seen that you can mobilize these movement just through engagement and the messaging, which is authentic and relevant. So I think that's one way of thinking about
amplifying the voice. And that comes from the opportunity for us to be united.
Yes.
And our purpose is united. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to push this one or poke the bear, because we all believe in people helping people. We all believe in the core social mission that we're, as you said, stumbled into. But as we move forward, that being uncomfortable is a difficult thing, Gary. So how does that affect our leadership?
Right. I think in some ways we need to be even more collaborative. As an industry, we're very collaborative. And Shaz, you talked about that. We need to get out of our lanes sometimes. We need to push the envelope out of our lanes, because we know at the end of the day, the purpose is true and honorable. Collaboration is something we have to look at even more so. And again, that's going to make us uncomfortable, because sometimes it's easier just to do it, right? But I'm going to add multiplication to that. When we collaborate and truly collaborate, when we do that together, we can multiply the impact way greater than if any of us try to do it ourselves. We talk about getting, being, and staying proximate, right? How do we go right there and get proximate and stay proximate with those we're serving? You know, they say that those closest to the pain are those closest to the solution. And I go back to the young people and the voices and the role models. Are we asking them, right? Are we asking them and truly hearing what they say? Because they probably have some pretty good answers on what to do. I go back to James. James said, credit unions should offer programs for kids. James also said, credit unions should feed people, right? He talked a lot about that. And that's what our industry is known for. When we come together, nobody can stop us. And it's not just providing loans, right? It's feeding people, right? It's providing hope, and it's providing dreams. We can do that. And it's going to take collaboration. It's going to take multiplication, and it's going to take proximity.
An amplification of voice, because
Absolutely.
we know story after story of how people are doing things. I want to share. I received a text from one of our clients a moment ago, and they said immediately, "This collision's fantastic. I think we need a youth council, and we need to listen, and we need to get started to find more James Rice models." Right? And so I thought to myself, yes, That's an idea into action. That's something that they will take away and go home to this is a board member. And the idea that they'll share that now, they'll share that concept. But are we, again, ready for when they come to the table? Our boards, I'll mention them for a moment, our boards need to be willing to have younger voices at the table. Our entire organization, we have young people within our organizations. And so are we using that, to be a conduit to hear and to listen?
Yes, simple task. We all have employees, and we have a lot of employees who have children between 11 and 16 and 18. Maybe we start there and look to kind of mobilize and listen and engage, and then put together some type of a framework and take it out to draw more, and then have them be the voice. Yes. And push the message to resonate. Again, going back to it, three of us can talk all day long, but in what way they will listen, I don't know, but they will listen to their own if they are, being the messenger of this beautiful industry mission and the work we do. So I think, but that is transformational thinking as opposed to transactional thinking, because obviously we know what business we are in. It's very transactional. We need to move beyond that.
Yep. I would say all those kids we heard on the video, the whole session, when they were using their voices, what if those voices were credit union voices that they were sharing? They were talking about, like you said, they're talking about the environment, they're talking about these other things. What if those voices were credit union voices? Yes. To the text you got, more James Rice's. Now, by the way, I'm going to look at the camera. CUNY Mutual's already got dibs on James, right? So I think he's already got a job offer in place. So we'll have to find somebody else.
That was so clever. And that was so, so nice. And it showed such authentic leadership on Bob's part. So you're right. And so from an ideas into action perspective, we're pushing forward on the idea of the next generation. And we want to change the frame of reference. We don't want to think of it as the generation that has already made the transition. They already have financial services. Why aren't we speaking to the 10, 11, to the 18 years old that we're now focusing on? And so we're passionate. And so the question comes down to, how do we take this to the world? And we're going to ask our audience, you need to have your takeaways and your ideas into action as you move into the future. I'm so excited that we got to spend some time together. They came to Las Vegas, and it is hot here. And yet we're willing to be part of some tough conversations to heat it up a little bit. And so thank you so much, Shazia, Gary. I just appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm excited to bring to all of you Shauna Richardson, another friend and colleague. She's the CEO of Sarah Technology, and one of our own that you'll recognize, Zach Christensen with the Mitchell Stankovic and Associates team, and they're going to talk to us about what all this means that we listened to today.
Thank you, Sue. And thank you, Shazia and Gary. I don't know about the rest of you watching, Shauna, but we probably could have had 2 hours with the three of them just having this conversation. But it's been amazing, and I'm so honored and excited to be here with longtime Underground partner Shauna Richardson. We've been sitting here, we've been watching and digesting everything that we've been hearing and seeing. And so what do you think of the Underground so far, Shauna?
I think every Underground, I typically say this reminds me of why I love the credit union industry so much. I mean, the level of humanity and communication and people truly leaning in. I mean, the level of this conversation has just been, this is by far and large, I say every time we do Underground, it gets better and better, but this is topped it for sure.
Incredible, yes. Yeah. And we've had a lot of conversations about James, our host, the representation of the next gen. What was your favorite part with his interview with CUNA Mutual's CEO, Bob Trenzo?
It's hard to map down just one favorite part with James. I mean, he's got a future in whatever he wants to do, but, you know, obviously he's got a role at CUNA Mutual Group. So, Bob, Shazia, I agree with you that we really got to see Bob's humanity and, you know, again, him leaning into CUNA Mutual's business model. And one of the things he said was CUNA Mutual is not just a products and a services company. I mean, everything they do is designed to make members' lives better. The engagement with James, though, that I think Bob was about to crack up was when he said, "Do you know any good dad jokes?" And I think we all had a big smile on that one. But no, it was neat to see their interaction, and I think James gave all of us a real dose of reality in terms of what the next generation of members is looking for. They're smart, they're adept, and it's not just that they want mobile applications, they want to be involved in part of the process.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, Sue and Shazia and Gary touched on it, that we saw the vulnerability with Bob, and I also really appreciated the fact that the way he spoke to James was not talking down to.
Right.
He was really having a conversation about his ideas, his needs, his wants, and I think we saw that with a lot of the credit union leaders, Chuck Fagan and Lucy Ito, where they were really honest but not speaking to them as a child. And so I really appreciated that. We moved into kind of how credit unions domestically are making an impact. Did anything stand out for you?
Yeah, for sure. Maria said it was a really poignant statement that the only borders that we have are the ones that we impose on ourselves. And she's in a region of the country where they've been under, you know, duress for various reasons. And so I thought that, you know, that was her. I love the way that she spoke to, you know, probably things that are going on in her field of membership, and it was so articulate and meaningful for all of us. Caroline said without small credit unions, we would have a financial desert, which is absolutely the case. Lucy said without credit unions, we'd be in a very dark place. Chuck Fagan said a world without credit unions, we would miss out on a lot of opportunities. So there were some great nuggets from very inspirational leaders during that segment.
Yeah, and I just want to take a quick second and mention Richard Cooper from Santa Cruz Community Credit Union, who really spoke to being in an outside marginalized community within credit unions, and you know, once again, that vulnerability from leadership being shared, and him giving those experiences were amazing. So thank you to everyone who lended their voice. We then turned globally and saw some of our amazing friends out there in the world. What were your thoughts on what they had to share?
Well, Brian told a really sincere story about a point in his career, and probably a point in his life, where he was in Uganda and the community really wanted to charter a credit union, and for so many reasons it was difficult, mostly because of safety. And part of World Council's mission is to instantiate new credit unions or new cooperatives. And I think he struggled with the decision for, again, various reasons. But he knew that the children in that village, if they didn't have something that was more grounding, that perhaps they end up in, you know, slavery or in the local military. And that was a turning point for him. And so he helped to start that cooperative. And I mean, when you think about the strength, the leadership, the commitment, when you're putting your own life in jeopardy, I mean, it speaks volumes to his character, and then I think the character of our system.
Absolutely.
So that was one. Ellie talked about the value of her model, you know, that there's a strong focus on women representation, supporting different ethnicities. She said strongly that more members will engage with their credit unions if they feel like they're heard and they are engaged regardless of what their dialogue, their ethnicity, where they live. And then Lenny made a really good point about what she's seeing in her own model, that it's imperative that credit unions teach, especially a younger generation, how to engage in a digital experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I was having a conversation with Shazia and Gary and Sue yesterday, and I told them, for me, and a lot of people ask why, you know, in the U.S., why focus on, you know, global credit unions, why look at them. And for me, it really is, you see them living that people helping people. We do that here in the U.S., but we do it in a very different way, and they're still starting it. They're still doing it, and so the things that they are doing and the strategies that they have are truly about when somebody comes in, they're probably saving a life. And so I think that inspiration is important for the U.S. credit unions to remember why we started.
Why we got started, absolutely. And Mark from the Australian system made, again, a fabulous point about like the number of different languages his members speak today. So when you think about it in terms of, we're not just a financial services model. I mean, we are engaged with people, and we live in such a connected world, and it is so imperative. John Pembroke said, he's like, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So use the ears more than the mouth, and he's so right. Especially when we're engaging again, not just in different, where people live, but the languages they speak and what's critical and important for them. So I'll go back to James, and because from the words or the mouths of babes come, just the most enlightening things. But he's like, why are credit unions relevant? Why are you cool? And he just had such a simplistic way of talking about what credit unions need to do. Like, you should feed more people. That's a good idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now we don't have time to unpack everything that happened with Shazia, Gary, and Sue. But was there's something that really stood out for you there?
Absolutely. That was a great conversation. I did want to go back to one thing that Sue said earlier in the segment, and it was about the importance of us really focusing on the members of tomorrow, that basically there are 1.6 billion young adults between 10 and 16, so the James of the world, and the concept of really giving our model to them. Why are we creating products and services for a new generation when perhaps they should be the ones that are leading that charge? And then I think with Shazia and Gary, Gary, you mentioned the importance of access to broadband, and that really resonated. We need, strong focus support on infrastructure, especially in rural areas. And that, it's kind of the concept of all boats rise, but there's some things that we've got to focus on, I think, not just as a credit union industry, but how we support our local area communities, our state communities, what we do at a federal level. Like we've all got to engage in a different way. Shazia, I just love listening to you. You're so emotionally intelligent, and but one thing that you really hit on, I think, throughout the conversation was we have this innate desire to be connected, and it's so, like, if we looked at, we've all been through some strife in the past 2 years in particular, so it's never been more important that we lean in with our humanity, that we stop and we listen, that we're really strongly paying attention, and that we're doing it with intention, that people feel like they're being engaged and brought in, and so I love that. Again, I could listen to you. You should write a book. I could listen to you all day long.
I think that's great. And the role models video that happened between the taped portion and their live portion, and then we had some really great comments on our chat for the live stream. Allison Carr from your credit union partner brought up the fact that with the next generation, we need to start meeting them where they are. And then we had a conversation going, and it's really about not just meeting them, but bringing them in and not making them feel like they're children. Those role models said that the only difference between us is height. and it's true. Their world is so much more open, and I feel like most times they're more self-aware than we are as adults. And I think we need to just stop and listen.
I was really, I was so thoroughly impressed by the wisdom of that youth group. And then their moment to reflect on whether they thought they were a mentor or not. There was some, vacillation. And one young woman said, she's like, yes, I am a role model. So you're right. I think it's just us leaning in, listening, and giving them the confidence to shine and get out in the world and teach us. Shazia, I think you made the comment of the beginner's brain, and we could use a lot more of that.
Absolutely.
So we've got a lot to learn from that young group.
Yeah. So everybody has had the chance to answer the question, the world would be a better place if. So I'm going to let you give yours.
I truly believe, I got into financial services because I truly believe that if everybody had access to fairly priced credit, they've got the opportunity to support their families, to go start a business, to support a business. But they certainly have better access to health care, into housing, and any number of things that just make us well-balanced human beings. So the role that credit unions play is so absolutely important. If you took credit unions out of the equation, there'd be a huge vacuum in the world. And so the work that everybody is doing is incredibly important, and it's not just because it's not a balance sheet thing. We're not just financial institutions. We're here to learn and love and support one another, and I couldn't be prouder, again, to be a part of this community, and I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I will just quickly believe that the world would be a better place if we were intentional about the respect we give to each other as humans, and to remember that our children in the next generation are humans too. So being intentional with that as well. So thank you, Shauna, for being
Zach.
here. And now I'm really excited to send it off to Sam Paxson from Co-op Financial Services, who has a special message for James.
Hi, James. Samantha Paxson here from Co-op Financial Services. What an honor it is to answer your questions today. So, what would make the world a better place? From my perspective, it's really finding common ground. If we could, as humans, really find what connects us more than what divides us, I think we could really accomplish so much in the world. And I actually think that's something special about credit unions. We find ways to share and cooperate and collaborate in order to help people in their financial lives. That's what makes credit unions cool, is that we share, we care, and we focus on what makes humans better and helps them get ahead in their lives. So excited to talk to you and talk to all the young people out there today. We need more of you, and we need your leadership. Thank you so much.
The world would be a better place if we all treated each other the way we wanted to be treated and had sympathy and empathy for each other's feelings.
If all races were to get along.
If everybody was kind and healthy. And we would read more books.
There was less violence.
If there was no racism. If there were no poor people. If everybody was nice and kind to each other. If we love each other.
If there was no world hunger.
You know, use each other's strengths to just be the best version of ourselves.
If I were the president. We are the world.
Thank you, everyone. The underground and credit unions are cool. All of my friends around the world, you better join a credit union.
The underground took us from offstage conversations into the classroom of the future. Thank you to James for hosting the show and challenging us to get ready for you. We better stand up and get busy because your generation is watching.
Looking forward to seeing you at the Underground Collision on November 8th. Join us as we reach beyond what is to what can be. Live from Las Vegas!